It was just by chance that I stumbled upon the location in Peoria for Throne Brewing. I was hanging out with intern Beans at a scuba lesson and decided to take a walk. Saw the Throne Brewing sign, got too excited, went in, had an amazing time, an amazing experience, and learned that the ownership is a man named Carlos. Carlos joins us. Carlos is the founder of Throne Brewing, and there's a whole story behind this too. And Carlos, I want you to bring us up to speed, if you could, on how in the world you got into the craft beer world. I think there's a grocery store or a market involved. Bring us up to speed, man.
So back in 2009, me and my family opened up a convenience store in downtown Phoenix called Virginia Market. It's about a mile and a half north from the baseball stadium, and it's just a traditional convenience style store market. And as you know, I would say about 2011, 2012, we were like, okay, we're starting to see a bunch of different people start moving into the state. And one thing that came up was craft beer. So we started little by little, bringing in craft beer. And then a couple of years later, we literally, had over 500 different styles of craft beers and wines. So that's, from that area and, seeing what people wanted, we just kept growing with it, added growler station. And then from there, I, on the retail side of craft beer and on the drinking side, for some of it, after a few years, at that time I was under 21, so I couldn't really sample the beers or try the beers
legally. Yes.
Legally, yes. And then, things did good. Kind of wasn't really, what I was envisioning, doing in my future and all that. I know I loved craft beer, and I was the one who was able to, kind of start that program over there. It was a traditional, family business. Mom, dad, brother, sister on occasion worked there, me. And then we also had other people, but, that was a full circle family business, and it was great and all that, but it was something to where I wanted to, either expand that and do something different, or, continue to do that, which, don't get me wrong, it was great, but, in my vision, I wanted to see more potential. So the opportunity presented itself, and in March of 2018, I found out that there was a brewery somewhat nearby to my house, about 10 miles away, called Dubina. And I went in, met, we talked a little bit. And at that point in time, I knew a lot about the craft beer industry on the retail side. And I was doing a little bit of home brewing, but even now I'll call myself, I'll admit it, I call myself an amateur brewer at best. That's why I don't really love the beer, just help out when needed. Right now, mainly kind of drink more than brew, but
you gotta
sample, you gotta try it,
you gotta sample the product.
You're the quality control department.
Yeah, exactly, quality control.
Speaking of which, Carlos, I want to pause you just for a second, because Mike, we did forget to do one thing. We got to crack open our Throne Brewing beers.
That's right.
So we have today your Blood Orange IPA. Oh. So anyways, please continue, Carlos. So you are into Dubina. You're talking to the owners then. What happens next?
I really like the facility. I had at in time they actually had their first ever Blood Orange IPA that they brewed, and I had it at Virginia Market, and I loved it. So I was like, okay, cool. I was like, all right, let's do this. I got more information. The opportunity presented itself, so we ended up, going forward. And in the beginning of March or end of March of 18, we made that transition. And it was definitely a fun transition.
I sense a little bit of sarcasm there.
It was not fun. It was not. It was not fun. and there was a few things like, you know, at that, there was a reason why they were selling. They wanted to, you know, get out and all that. But, you know, working on a commercial side of the brewery, the restaurant side, I've had a little bit of experience because between when we first took over Virginia Market, we ended up putting a grill, pizza oven, and all that stuff. So I had some food background, not really dine-in too much, but, you know, it all, reason why I say dine-in, because even dine-in and to go and just pick up, it's a whole different perspective, and businesses are run, you know, each one has a different, you know, format of how it should be run and all that stuff. So, you know, the brewery was something to where, in my mind, I had a little bit of experience with everything. I wasn't, you know, even I'll admit it, I'm winging it every day. Even today, you know, if I go up to you and I'm like, I know this 100%, I'm full of shit. You know,
Yeah.
So every day I'm winging it. So, you know, and it's just the ability to, you know, learn and all that stuff. So I took over, and, you know, it's a new brew house. So I kind of had to learn that. And I had, you know, 30 days to learn that, because that was kind of the transition period where they agreed to stay on and show me the system. So, and then, you know, then all the fun stuff that you people don't really see behind the scenes. Boiler, you know, I mean, the burner for the kettle blew out, the glycol system blew out, all within, I think we unexpected had to pay like $25,000 worth of things, that everything just started breaking down. And then in the middle of that, I had a, it's not called pneumonia, but it's an upper respiratory lung infection. And pneumonia is lower respiratory, but I'm not a medical expert and all that stuff. But it put me out for like 6 weeks, where you're exhausted, you're tired, there's no motivation and all that. And this all happened, you know, all these expenses and all that stuff, which made me be, you know, go insane. And, you know, at that point in time, it was like, what did I get myself into, all this and that. So you kind of just got to push through it. And, you know, I was able to push through it, able to fix those issues. I got out to 100%. And then little by little, just kind of trying to grow the business as much as possible. But it was always...
Carlos, real quick, if I could, Carlos, because I want people to understand, back in 2018, when you were going through all this, 2018 was the year, right? With Dabina?
Yeah.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
23.
Okay, 23 years old. So I don't want to paint over that. 23 years old, you said you got, you know, all this stuff went wrong at the very beginning. And it's not like buying a house when you buy like a home warranty or something like that. You're buying a business. You're just pretty much on your own, and you've got to take care of everything. And then you have this respiratory infection, and then you have to decide to push through it at 23 years old. I don't know of a lot of 23-year-olds that would push through this kind of adversity right out of the gates when running their own business. Who did you lean on? Could you lean on anyone? Did anyone inspire you and help you out?
It was my parents, for sure, but primarily my dad. He's had, you know, he's worked and had convenience stores pretty much, you know, my whole life. So at the age of 8 years old, he came in and he's like, you know, I barely saw him at that time because he's working, you know, 7 days a week, 365. So, you know, little 8-year-old doesn't see his dad. His dad's like, hey, let's go to work. And I'm like, cool. Yeah, let's, you know, I want to hang out with my dad. And then all of a sudden he's like, stock these coolers, do this and that. And I'm all happy. I'm like, yeah, I get to spend time with, you know, dad and all that stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I love that time, but it kind of, at that little, you know, being that young and, you know, working and being trained. And it was, you know, once a week, maybe twice a week, you know, Saturday and Sundays. And then as I grew about 12, 13 years old, it was 2-3 times a week. And like I said, he worked 7 days a week, and our store at that time was about 35 miles away. So it wasn't really like, you know, hey, you could go, like, if I'm tired, I'm like, hey, can we go home now? It's not like we can go home. It's like, we're here all 12 hours. So, and then after, you know, 13, 14, and then once I turned 16 and got a car, he's like, let's go every day. He's like, I don't got someone. So I'm all excited and doing all that stuff. And, you know, he put me in charge for most of the time. And, you know, from there, I just kind of learned, and, you know, I still, remember my mom makes fun of me all the time doing this, but there were times when I was younger and, I didn't wake up in time, and my dad would leave and he'll be like, oh, he's good, he's tired. You know what I mean? And then I would be crying like for him to take me to work. And then my mom would be all upset because she's like, all right, fine, I got to drive this little shit to work. And, there was a few times that happened. And then, but it just kind of, showed that, one thing, I wanted to be with my dad. And then second, it was like, for some reason he put something in my mind that is like, yeah, let's go ahead and work. And,
So let's go to the idea, Carlos, that you took this risk at the age of 23. And that's kind of what Mike was alluding to. And you gave us this awesome story. What made you, though, in that moment go, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to buy this brewery and I'm going to run it at the age of 23. So what are you now, 26?
26, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the lesson there? If you're going to talk to other entrepreneurs about buying a business at such a young age, what's that motivation to keep you going to say, yeah, take the risk because it's worth it, even when the boiler blows up or whatever?
It's kind of, it goes down to what are you kind of, and this is what I'm going in my thought process. What am I, what is my vision? What is my future? What do I see myself in 5 years, 10 years? What do I want to accomplish in life? Do I want to just go and, work, 9 to 5 and then go home and then the stress stays at home? Or do I want to, start and build kind of, that company, that brand, and that's kind of where I put myself. I'm like, and that's the reason why I kind of wanted to step away from the store, because don't get me wrong, the store was fun and I've been raised on it and, I've enjoyed it. And but I wanted to build, it wasn't a brand. It wasn't a company. It was just a, kind of a 9 to 5. And I didn't see myself. I wanted to build this and, try to make it grow as much as I can and put in my head, never be satisfied. You always want to, work hard and make, see growth and all that. And something that benefited me, to kind of answer part of your question, is it's not easy. We have people come in all the time that want to open up their own business, whether they're home brewers in the brewing industry or restaurant and all that stuff. And sometimes people ask me that same question. And one thing that kind of benefits me is at that age, I'm single. I didn't have a family. I have like a family, but no like wife and kids and all that stuff. And the reason why I say that is, when some people ask or say they want to start their own business, I'm like, are you prepared to not see your wife or your husband or your kids that often? Because, this job, this company becomes your life, especially in the beginning of it. Because, who knows, you're not going to, it's very rare. It's possible, but it's very rare for a business to be profitable in the first year, 2 years of business, because you're either reinvesting or just trying to market and get that exposure and all that stuff. So I didn't have those. And I'm not saying that's the reason. It was my reason, where I was able to dedicate 7 days a week, 16, 18 hours a day to focus on this business. Anything that happened, good or bad, I was there.
Now, Carlos Toma is joining us. He's the owner of Throne Brewing. And I got to tell you, going to the artistic side of it, because let's face it, the beer industry and crafting beer and craft beer industry is an art. It's a science. It's fantastic. I want to get into your logo, because I'm a logo guy. And I got to tell you, you seem like a very detail-oriented person, a very driven person. You knew what you wanted that brand to be. Where did you come up with this logo design? This thing is, and I'm holding it up right now because I, of course, got one of these Banditos, because that's one of the sickest logos I've seen in the biz. Where did you come up with that? How'd you come up with that? And what was the process? Did people just lose their minds when they saw that? Or did you have to go through a lot of different options?
So with that, I'll be the first to admit I'm the least creative person in the world. Definitely in the craft beer industry. So we were trying to rebrand for a long time, but it was kind of like that name, finding that name. So I put a list of 150 names and we're just writing. And Throne was part of those names. And I kept going back to it, and I was like, I like it, but I don't love it. So I reached out to Corey Miller from Park Street Studio. He's a local artist designer on the east side, East Valley. And I was like, hey, dude, I like this name. I don't love it, but something is missing. And he's like, all right. So he asked me a couple questions, and we kind of, I didn't tell him no hot beer, no nothing. And then he messaged me. He's like, this is draft one. And draft one was this logo, exactly this color, this everything. And I was like, he's like, yeah, let me know. He's like, it needs a lot more work. I'm like, no, dude, spot on. You killed it. I'm like, send me the file. He's like, you don't need nothing else. I'm like, no. He's like, here, let me send you a couple colors. I'm like, dude, now at that point, I was like, I love the logo. I love the name. They work well with each other. The branding and the marketing and everything that we can do. Now, all of a sudden, just, it made it complete in a sense. So, ever since then, I was like, now I Throne, love the name. Logo, love it even better. So the logo definitely
the full picture, right? You had to have you had the name, then you saw the image, which I'll try to describe it for a podcast. Is sort of it's like a face. So you got eyes, you got nose, and then you have a hop beard. So it's a beard, and you have a crown on what would be the king on the throne, and that's why it's cool. It's like, and it's a green kind of hoppy color. And it just pops, is what Mike is saying. So you see it and you're like, heck yes. And if you want to see it, go over to the video and check it out. Carlos is actually wearing the Throne Brewing shirt as well, which of course is his brewing company. So it makes sense.
The bandito is the way to go. That bandana is sick. And actually, Corey did the beer we're drinking right now, Blood Orange IPA. That's got Corey written all over it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's his style. We had Corey on a couple of times. Corey is a one hell of an artist, and he just has that style and that vibe where you just know that's distinctly his. And I think that the cool thing is that the can is very distinctly his, but your logo, I didn't know he designed that logo. So it's not really that's a Corey Miller design or something like that. It's just that's yours, and it's definitely distinctly Throne Brewing. It gives me kind of a Trident kind of vibe. I don't know why.
Poseidon or something.
Yeah. I think it's great, man. It's fantastic. And you know me, Rob knows me. I'm an absolute logo hoe. I love logos. I am a sucker for logos. I will grab a beer just because of the logo. So yeah, that's what turned me on to Blood Orange.
Nice. Yeah, that one I didn't really give him that much information. I'm like, Blood Orange, this is our flagship, what do you got? He's like, same thing. He's like, I got you, ask me a few questions. I don't even think I even did anything to help him with those answers. I think he was just asking me those questions to make me feel like I gave some input on the can, which I gave nothing on it, and he came up with that, and that was draft one again. Usually we do other things, and we go through draft 1, 2, 3, and that was draft one. And the only thing we had to change was just things to put it on a can. Other than that, he killed it. He's absolutely great.
Okay, so we're missing a step. We're missing a step real quick here as your evolution to Throne Brewing. I think that Freakin' Brew came into the play here at some point, right?
It did, yeah. Pretty much in April of last year, right in the start of our pandemic, we ended up taking over Freakin' Brewery, which was also very fun because we pretty much agreed before the pandemic, and then everything got shut down, and it was like, oh shoot, this is fun. But it was a lot of people went up to us and they were like, hey, are you okay? Acquiring a new business in the middle of a pandemic and all that stuff. And it was definitely tough, but it was, kind of had its pros and cons to it, because we ended up also getting a canning line at that point in time, and we had it at that facility. So we were able to produce a lot more beers, and, everyone in the pandemic was struggling, but there was other accounts that would have, kind of like the corporate retail, like Total Wine, Whole Foods, and AJ's, accounts that would have been really hard to get into 2 years ago, we're really open to supporting local and carrying our product. And, we also just signed with a distributor. So we were able to focus a little bit on distribution to those spots that were still, not struggling too much compared to us focusing on just a to-go format. But we were able to stay a little busy, and, brewers were still making beer, and turned out okay given the circumstances.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because what kind of transitions did you have to make? I mean, you mentioned a couple of them there with the canning lines and getting it out there. So just to kind of reset, so you buy Dubina in 2018, and then 2020 you buy Freakin' Brew and combine to create Throne. So now you have the two locations. So what was the business like drop off after the shutdown, which was middle of March last year? And how quickly were you able to get more product out into the stores, the AJs, the Whole Foods, and the other stores, the Total Wines, to be able to continue to grow the business, assuming you did, in 2020 into 2021?
We didn't get too much of a hit because we're still, small brewery. So we were still able to get, that was one of our fears, was not being able to get materials, specifically cans, aluminum. We definitely saw on the news, and aluminum shortage. So that definitely kind of scared us a little bit, because, at that point in time, we're like, all right, what do? We don't have cans. Do we do bottles? We just wanted to do anything to go. Growlers, 64-ounce growlers were almost impossible to get. Every time, we would go through a traditional batch, and that would, last us a month or two, and now it was lasting us like 3 days. So, and, no one had materials, and we were able to get materials, nothing, enough to supply those purchase orders. Ingredients with barley and hops were, you could get them, but you had to pay a little extra, whether they were on the spot market. If we didn't have, at that point in time, we didn't really have any contracts for any hops or anything like that. So it was okay, but it was definitely nerve-wracking being able to make sure we had these ingredients. And I kind of had that mindset. I'm like, let's try to stock up and, get these products. And our head brewer, Brad, he comes from a supply chain background. So he's like, no, that's not how we're supposed to do it. We got to get for the next month or the next 2 weeks. So we're not stocking up on inventory. And I'm like, what if this isn't there? But the materials were still there. We were still able to brew. We didn't really have too much delay. So
Nice.
kind of.
Well, that's one of the things that Carlos, Mike, and I love about the craft beer industry is the amount of work that you guys put in, not only as business owners, as brewers, but you have to supply all of these things. It's not, okay, we just go and make a beer and there you go. It's a complicated process to deliver what comes in this can, because it requires you to think about, okay, where am I going to get the can? Okay, canning line, got it. I got to have a label for it. Okay, now I got to make the beer and make sure the beer is good and have quality assurance so that every time you brew the beer, it tastes the same. All of that is a massive process that takes time to kind of figure out, which is why Mike and I wanted to have you on the podcast, because you're at such a young age trying to do all of these things. And that is super interesting, because brewing as a business is super detail oriented, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Even on the producing side, there's 100 different ways on when brewing a beer where, one little where you transfer the beer or carbonate or just a sample valve can infect the whole entire batch. There's a limitless amount of errors that, one little mistake and that whole batch can be dumped, whether it's being infected or off flavors or, just not up to your standards. And that's just on the production side. What about, that's including keg cleaning and the beer on tap and making sure all that. So there's so much factors where a beer can go bad. And that's why we all say, for brewers, they're janitors that make beer. They're cleaning, they're cleaning and sanitizing 95% of the time. Obviously, every brewer's dream is to go in and just brew the beer on brew day and then have everyone else do it. But that's not even close to, what the reality is. The reality is you're waking up a couple hours before, making sure everything's clean, whether it's the day before and all that. And, everyone's one little mistake from someone not doing the right sanitizing or just turning off the valve at the wrong time or whatever it may be for, can definitely affect the final product of the beer.
Carlos Toma, the owner of Throne Brewing, is joining us. And I have to ask you this, because at 26 years old, you actually have employees. And what is your biggest challenge working with employees that are probably older than you? And say this 26-year-old kid's coming in here, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have a lot of brew background. He doesn't have this and that. How do you deal with that? How do you overcome those hurdles? Did you just find the right people? Did you luck out, or do you have to do something about it?
We don't get me wrong. The staff that we have right now has been great. And everything's doing good, but you definitely have those issues with people that are like, this guy's a lot younger than me. And I'm not gonna, you don't know nothing, or, the best way I can use it as an example is when I was 13 years old, we had the store, and my dad went to go, I was behind the counter, and my dad went up and he's like, all right, I'm going to go to the store and get some stuff. And there was 3 other people behind the counter, and they were all in their, 30s and their 40s. And he's like, all right, good. And then he told me a couple things, and he's like, okay, take care of this. And, you're pretty much in charge. You have when you look back at it now, you got a 13-year-old that was just told that he's in charge of this place. And one of the guys went up to him and he's like, hey, why is he in charge? He's just a kid. My kid's older than him. And pretty much my dad went up to him and he's like, I understand. He's like, no, this is disrespectful and all that stuff. He's like, let's kind of take that out of the, equation. Do you know how to batch the credit card? He was like, no. And he looked at me, I'm just all quiet and, there. And he's like, Carlos, do you know how to do that? And I'm like, yes. He's like, do you know how to run a diagnosis on the lottery machine? He's like, no. And he looked at me and I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you know how to do liquor ordering? Because that was kind of like it was all over the telephone with ordering and all that, instead of right now where it's like call in or a sales rep comes in. And he's like, no. And he's like, Carlos, do you know how to do that? And I'm like, yeah. And then he named a few other things, and he's like, you see where I'm going with this? And at that point, it's like, it's not about the age, it's about what you know and what you can do. Now, that's also why you have a business. You hire brewers that know, better than you. You hire people that know better than you. You hire servers, bartenders, cooks, and all that stuff. So I'm not saying I know everything, but when we're talking about running a business or, taking care of things, or, who's in charge, I don't even like saying it like that. It's, for running or taking care of it at that point, it's like, do you know better than my 13-year-old son? And he's like, he didn't like that. So he ended up quitting. There's other people, and at that point, I'm just like, he didn't like that a 13-year-old was in charge of him and he had kids older than me. And it kind of comes back to, here, there's people that come in and they're like, my kids are older than you. Why would I work for you? Or, call me a baby and all that stuff. And I learned to accept it. It's all about, if I'm not taking it personal, it's about, we're running this business. Are you able to do your job? If your answer is yes, then, obviously let's, continue to try to grow this company together. But I would say right now it's, not as many people as you think, but you can definitely kind of see it, or, people might not say it directly to me, but you can kind of tell a little bit in their attitude. And to me, I don't like to think like that, to where, oh, probably upset because I'm younger or whatever. That doesn't even go in my head. So I don't really encounter those situations as much as I used to when I was a kid, because I think people see now, 26-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you bought two breweries and combined them into one, Throne Brewing. So, I mean, that's success speaks for itself. Being detail oriented, running things speaks for itself. And I'm starting to think that when people insult, say, me or Mike or whoever, that reveals more about them than it does about you or me or whatever. Because it's almost like insults reveal insecurities in some way. And so in looking at insults that way, it's just a shift of perspective. And you're like, very interesting. That's very telling of how you're insulted because of this. I was talking to a guy, I think yesterday, and he said that he has learned over the years that, and he was an MMA fighter, and he's said that, the biggest thing is the power play. It's like when people get insecure, they go right to their power move. So if they have a fancy car, they'll be like, oh yeah, well, I drive an Aston Martin. That means they're insecure. And I'm like, there's tons of insecurity in the world. We all have some. And sometimes it's age-based. Like, wait a minute, this guy's at 26 and he's already running a business. So I would just take it as, good job, me. That's how I would take it.
Mm-hmm. No, we definitely, and I'm not trying to make this like a, motivational speech, but it comes down to that point.
No, please do. I want to be motivated, Carlos. Do it, man. Go.
It comes down to that point where, you got to get in that head, never be satisfied. You know what I mean? No one's better than you. And that's what I kind of try to tell people. Well, this person has this. Don't be satisfied. No one's better than you. What do you got to do to, instead of being jealous and all that stuff, either get your ass to work or go do this. So, and go do what you want. It's not like you're trying to become better than that other person. It can be and all that stuff, but that's not the mindset. Okay, this person has these new pair of shoes or whatever. And, oh man, I want them. Well, get your ass to work and get those pair of shoes. Don't go ahead and be like, haha, I got those pair of shoes. But, you never got to be satisfied. And, you just got to work as, your output is going to show. And then kind of, again, I don't mean to repeat myself, that nobody is better than you. It's, it's to always to push yourself that, you got this. And again, I'm not good at motivational speeches.
You're doing great
at it, actually.
Like a young Tony Robbins. You're doing fantastic. I love it. I know it's good. No, Carlos, I'm being serious when I say this because you're on the show with us right now, and this is a good portion of your day. And as a small business owner, I understand, and Rob is a small business owner, we both understand that time is money and time is very valuable. So if you weren't hanging out with us on our show, enjoying a beautiful blood orange IPA, what would you be doing? What's keeping you up at night? What, because I know there's boring sides of the business, but there's also in boring sides of business ownership, but there's also, I'm now going to create and grow. What's boiling in your head right now? What do you need to do today? What do you need to know this week? Like what's driving, what's pushing you in the morning?
What's pushing me kind of goes back to that never be satisfied. What can I do to take this business to the next part, to the next step? Is that take a meeting and focus on getting better ingredients? Is that focusing on meeting with, focusing on marketing? Is it, for today, for example, I would have been at Peoria, communicating with our distributor to get a purchase order with our brewer, which that's pretty much what I'm going to do after we leave here to make sure how much beers we need and what's coming up. And then also submitting labels to get printed and all that stuff. So it's, my main position that I tell everyone is my job is to make this, to assist. So if, the kitchen needs help, I'm there. If the servers, bartenders, brewers, if Allie needs help over there, I'm there to assist, when needed. But other than that, my job my job description is to make this business grow, to make this business succeed, to make sure the bills are paid. But just to take that, whatever the next step is, whether it's, something very small or something like, one of our next steps we want to do is, build a patio at our Glendale facility. So, just trying to focus and take a step back and, one step at a time, what can we do to take this business to the next level?
Which requires planning, effort, all kinds of thinking. That's that time, right, that Mike's talking about, because you have to give yourself enough time to be able to think of those things. Like, what are the next steps? So how many hours do you think you put in a week? Are you taking your dad's track? You did mention you work 7 days a week, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. Is this something you love to do? Because if you're spending 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week doing it, if you don't love it, it's going to be a grind. So is it something that you're loving, these new challenges, and it's just something you're vibing with?
Absolutely. It is definitely something that I, love, and I enjoy this business, because to answer your question, something's going on with Throne, whether it's working or I'm thinking about or planning about 18 hours a day. And I'm doing this 7 days a week, and I'm not complaining because I asked for this. Whether that's at home thinking of the next step, or, working here, or, whatever it may be, 7 days a week. Now I wouldn't say, easily, but we have a really good staff here where I can go ahead and tell them, hey, look, I'm going to take the next 3 days off, 4 days off. But to me, it's like, do I really want the next 3-4 days off? It's, can I focus on doing this? Can my body handle it? Can my mind handle it? The answer is yes, go ahead. If not, then if I'm having doubts, take a couple minutes, get my thought, find what the purpose is. Because we all get burnt out. So we kind of just got to get in our minds and find the, purpose. And then hopefully that burnout phase goes away. And, there's days that it's easy where I'm like, oh man, this was a 20-hour day, and it's like, so already done. I'm like, I need to hurry up and go to sleep so we can start the next day. And there's other days where I'm trying to, I start my first hour and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be a brutal one. So.
Now, Carlos, I was talking to Allie at your Peoria location, and she did claim, I'm not throwing her under the bus here, but she did claim, and she held up one of your little taster glasses, Joe. They're fantastic. Their logo, they're like, and it's funny for me to say this, especially me, they're cute. So she said it's almost impossible to get Carlos to just stop for a minute and taste just one of these, no matter if it's a new brew. Are you taking a little bit of time? And if not, I'm encouraging you to do it. Taking a few minutes to just sit and go, wow, our flagship Blood Orange IPA, which we're having right now, take a sip of it and go, damn, this is good. Kind of to reiterate what you're doing and what you're creating, and not only the brand, but the taste of your brand as well.
Oh, absolutely. There are times where, I'll go ahead, but, and like drink a beer and all that stuff. It's primarily at the house. But other than that, like I'll have a beer with Brad, or every once in a while with the staff, have a shift beer with them and all that stuff. But we also have people that are in the industry that name those 5-ounce beers Carlos size pours, because because anytime I go out, you want a beer? I'm like, I just want a little bit. They're like, and then they start, I wouldn't say making fun of me, but, throwing pokes at me. But I'm like, well, I had a 5-ounce here, a 5-ounce there, 5-ounce here. So in the last 3 hours, I had 5, 6-ounce pours, and that's 30 ounces. And I'm like, that's why they're like, you want to try some? You want to try some? I'm like, I quality control 100%. It's there. And I definitely will have a beer, every now and then. If I go home, I'll have 2 or 3, but other than that, if you ever see me drinking out, it's mainly for quality control and all that stuff, just because, I don't know.
What is it about beer,
Right.
Carlos, that drew you in? So it started obviously at Virginia Marketplace in kind of downtown-ish Phoenix, but it propelled itself into owning a brewery. Why do you love craft beer so much?
It's that creativity. It's that, we have this West Coast. It's not like, if we were brewing flagships and we had 8 beers and we were brewing those 8 beers, 24/7, 365 and nothing new, I can't, in the end, it is a business, and the business is the first. And I would say, yes, I can do it. But the motivation is like, hey, let's go ahead and brew this West Coast IPA with blood oranges in it. Let's go ahead and brew this sour. We've always brewed this kind of sour. Why not do it like this? And when you talk about it, and then you and the whole team get to make it happen, and then you get to drink it, and you're like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? We don't have to, we get to use those creative juices and just, make what we want to make. Obviously we want to, it is a business and we want to make what sells, and we definitely have to put that in factor. But, it's just that, hey, what should we do today? All right, let's do, this blood orange IPA. The guys in the kitchen, they're like, oh, let's try this new dish out. Okay, let's sample it. It's great. It's just something new, something different. It's every day it's something new. I don't wake up every day and do the same thing twice. And comparing that to the store, you're just, yes, the craft beer part is what I liked about it, because every week it was a new craft beer. You know what I mean? You don't get a new Pepsi or a new Coke, or, hey, we got this new water or anything like that. So it comes to, oh, look at this new beer. And then that's kind of where it all came together with here. It's like, we're brewing this beer. And obviously we're brewing the beers that we know that sell and people want in the flagships. But, we did that a couple months ago. We just brewed a traditional style, and we're like, let's throw some white chocolate and raspberries. And that was like one of my favorite beers ever that we produced out of here. And, we just did a small batch of it, but seeing the outcome with us just throwing it in, all right, and just coming within and talking, it's that, that creativity, that, always doing something different. Except for paying the bills, it's always the same.
The unfortunate part of life,
by the way.
So let's talk collaboration, because we've come to find that the brewers in the Valley here in Arizona are pretty helpful. Do you find that that's been the case for you? Have you sought help from any brewers? Have they been helpful? Or are we, you're like, what? I'm doing this on my own. I got my brewers. I'm ready to rock and roll.
No, it's a community. Now, every community is different, but in the pandemic, all the breweries around us that are on the West Valley, I try to go on the East Valley, but I'm always on this side. It's not like we talk every day, but if someone wants, is missing an ingredient, they're like, hey, I need some Citra hops. I'm like, do I got it? Do I not? All right, I got it. Hey, do you have and I'll go up and I'm like, hey, I need, do you have an extra brick of this yeast or whatever it may be? And we're all just, if we got it, we got it. If we don't, we don't. We've done with everyone pretty much on the, that I know with all the brewery owners, I've either asked them for something or they asked us for something else. And it's, it comes to that community part. And then people go up to us and they're like, oh yeah, we doing this collaboration and all that stuff. Oh, I just saw your, competition across the street. I'm like, I don't see them as competition. It might be like 0.1% competition, but I want more breweries there. There's a reason why if you go to San Diego, there's 50 in like a 3-mile radius, or in Portland or anything like that. It's, there's a lot of breweries. So you make good beer, you have good food, you got good service, whatever you do of all those things, people will come. If you don't have any of those things, that's the reason why people don't come. But, that's why I don't see them as competition. I might see the oreganos across the street as competition, maybe, you know what I mean? But having that mindset of there aren't our competition, we're doing collaborations with each other for a reason, we're trying to market and promote ourselves together, but we're also trying to use that little time to hang out with each other and talk about beer, talk about, bullshit or whatever it may be. But, I had a brewery I went over and I saw a regular over there. And he just looks at me. And once we made eye contact, I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, hey, I'm sorry. I come to go to other breweries too. I'm like, me too.
You're allowed
like,
to, yeah.
I'm like, you're allowed to. I go to other breweries too. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? I'm like, what do you think I'm doing here?
Exactly.
I'm here to have a beer and, to chit chat, and I'm not saying everyone thinks of that as competition. In the end, we're all trying to, work and grow our companies and pay our bills and all that stuff. But, that's kind of where I see what's great about this community. We're all just trying to help each other out in the process. We're trying to help ourselves out, whether it's collaborating. And that's kind of where, trying different beers together, it's kind of what brings the craft beer community together. And it doesn't work with everyone. There's other breweries that are like, I just need to stay in my bubble. We got this, kind of like you mentioned, and that's great. And we might say hi if I ever stop in, or if you ever stop in, or at a festival or an event. But other than that, that's pretty much it.
Here's to festivals coming back.
Oh, yes.
That happens soon.
Now, Carlos, Throne Brewing, there has to be a next. You were talking about never be satisfied, always be pushing, always be building. What is next? And you don't have to give away any deep secrets if something big is coming up, but I mean, what in your mind is, we have to take this step? The next step is right there. I want to grab it. What is it?
I think for us right now, we definitely want to do, I know this sounds very boring, but a little bit of remodeling inside and possibly add a patio. But as for next, I don't know yet, to kind of say, I like to, if the opportunity presents itself, I'm going to try to take it. That's kind of what I might have skipped through that. What happened with the freaking brewery. I wasn't really interested in getting another location, nor did it even pop in my mind, but we needed to, at that point, we were brewing a lot and we needed to contract brew. And I reached out to Freakin about contract brewing, and long story short, we were about to contract brew, and I'm like, or if you're thinking about selling it, and she's like, she entertained that conversation. I was like, oh boy, what I get myself into.
Yeah.
after talking, it's like, all right, the opportunity presented itself, I'm going to take it. So today I'm going to be like, yeah, we're not looking at growing. And I can say, I'm like, yeah, I don't have no plans on opening up another location. And then tomorrow I drive past somewhere or talk to someone, and it's like, oh man. So I can't, if the opportunity presents itself, I can't walk away from that. I don't know. I call it a sickness, but other people might call it something else. But
we call it entrepreneurial growth, and the right mindset is what we call it.
And that goes to where I think before we started recording, I'm like, insanity is near.
Exactly.
So tell me, come on, you go home and you go home, and mom and dad, I mean, not like you're living at home, but you go maybe over for a holiday, mom and dad, they've got to be beaming proud of you as a dad, as a multi-generational, there we go, entrepreneur. I know that we always talk about business. We always talk about what mom and dad did, what grandma and grandpa did, and what we did, and things like that. They've got to be proud of you. Is that just an amazing feeling, knowing that, they built their business, you're building yours? That's got to be something rewarding for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're happy. Like my dad calls me up every day. It's like, you need me to do anything? You need me to do anything? You want me to help you can or do anything? And, same thing. My mom's just like, yeah, I'm going to be off today. And I'm like, okay. She's like, you want anything? You need help or whatever. So their support is there. And they're definitely, the whole family's still there. It's not like, once, I left Virginia Market, which we ended up selling last year, January, that it was like, oh yeah, now I'm doing this by myself. It's still, family's still offering support. I can, the help is there if I need it.
Which is fantastic. I want to bring this full circle because it was a few years ago. Our buddy Matt actually owns the auto shop right across the street from Virginia Marketplace. So one day I was bringing my wife's car in there, and I noticed the shop, and I was like, oh, growler fill station. Interesting. So when I went and picked up the car, I brought a growler, went in, got a growler filled up. I can't remember what it was. And now here I am drinking your Throne Brewing Blood Orange IPA. Nice. So that's kind of cool. I just realized, I'm like, Virginia Market, I think that was the place. And I looked, and I was confirmed. So I don't know. It was probably 5-6 years ago, maybe. I went in there. I was in that part of town, did it. And this is pretty cool that Maybe you were there. Give me the beer. I didn't even know. You might have been like, I don't know, 16 at the time, but it was pretty damn cool. So just from that standpoint, I'm proud of you. From that standpoint, having the entrepreneurial background to be able to do what you're doing right now at the age of 26 and have 3 years under your belt already, that's pretty damn cool.
Thank you.
Now, so I got to say,
go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
There are a few people real quick that I'm jealous of their logo. You're one of them. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. I mean, I love ours. I'm big fan of ours. I'm telling you, man. I saw this thing. I was like, I want one of those hats. I want one. Unfortunately, your hats don't fit my giant head because sometimes you got to put Vaseline on my ears to get me through the door. My head's so big. So the hats didn't fit, but the Bandito upgrade and definitely going back for sure, man. I just dig it. I think your whole look is fantastic. You got that brand that you wanted to build, and I just think that you can stand on the quality of this beer, the quality of the logo and the branding and merchandising you have, dude. And I just can't wait to watch you just catapult, just skyrocket. It's going to be fun to watch.
Thank you.
So before we let you go, tell us about a couple of your beers. So we're going to drink the Blood Orange. Mike and I are drinking it. We're going to rate and review it here in a moment. Tell us about the Blood Orange and tell us about one more beer that you want to have us go try. Because I was actually up in Flagstaff at the Majestic Marketplace, and they had a bunch of your beers in there. They had 4 or 5 of your beers in there. So let us know what's going on.
So the beer that you guys are drinking, it's our Blood Orange IPA. It's one of our flagship brews. It's brewed as a traditional West Coast style IPA. The hops that are in it are Warrior, Citra, Simcoe, Cascade, and Amarillo. So very by itself, if you ever want to try it by itself, that is our Bell Road IPA. We used that as we brewed that beer. We used it as the base. And then during secondary fermentation, we added our Blood Orange puree. And it's kind of just while we're transferring it, we're blending it, using the Blood Orange, carbonating it, and then to the can. So very, simple, traditional West Coast style IPA with blood oranges. Another beer that we have now that we are very proud of is one of my favorite styles of beers are German style beers. And we just released a Surface of the Sun. It's a German style Kolsch. And that, to me, light, easy drinking, crisp, definitely refreshing. As one of my favorite beers that we've brewed to date. Definitely in the top 3.
I had it what was I there last week? Yeah, I had it there about a week and a half ago. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, well, definitely that one did really well. We have another beer in the tank, and then we're going to be doing some can releases with that one as well.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay, well, how about we come to the spot? We got to come to the spot in Glendale because I like the whole vibe you're talking about with the kitchen and whatnot, and we'll have some of that.
Absolutely. Just let me know when you guys are in the area.
I'm an old Glendale guy, so I went to Apollo High School for the love of Creek. G-Town's my spot. Yeah.
Nice.
Dig it. Well, Carlos, we'll let you go back to work, run your breweries. We look forward to seeing you soon in person. This beer, really good. We'll tell you about it here in just a moment. Carlos, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you, man. Keep up the great work. You are, at the age of 26, inspiring us old guys to get up and get after it and chase our passions. So we love you for that as well. Keep it going, my man.
Wait, he's only 2 decades younger than me. That's all.
Deal.
I mean, just 2 decades. Come on.
But this is what we love about craft beer, right? It's having these kind of conversations. It's we can learn things from each other. We can teach each other things, and we can have interesting conversations. So appreciate you being part of the Brewmance, where this is exactly what Mike and I want to do. We want to drink other people's craft beer and explore other people's minds and tell us some stuff. So appreciate you telling us some stuff.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
That was Carlos Toma, 26 years old. And he basically has bought 2 breweries and combined them into Throne Brewing out in the West Valley. Pretty fantastic story, Mike Russell.
Because we hear the millennials all the time, the Gen Zers, and they always get a bad rap. Like collectively, they're a bunch of idiots. They're a bunch of lazy. Everyone got a trophy. They're a bunch of snowflakes. And then we meet Carlos, and you think, wait a second, this isn't. I don't think Carlos is just a good apple. I think there's a lot of Carloses out there. It's just that we have wrapped in everyone in that age bracket as somebody that's lazy and doesn't have drive. But I think the cool part about that is the generational entrepreneur spirit, the generational small business owner, where he saw his family buy a business and then participated in that. And I think that's such a valuable lesson to include, like my kids, to include them into the businesses that we have and to show them what's going on, to show them all the work instead of dad's working, leave me, you go do your thing, dad's working. Because I want to create Carloses. And I think that's the best compliment I can give the kid, is that I want my kids to have that same spirit.
I love that, because the traditional model is you go to school, you go to high school, you get your degree from high school, your diploma, then you go to college and you get your 2 or your 4-year degree, or then you go get your master's, and then you get a job and you work for somebody else. But there's a whole nother path out there that I was not really aware of when I was a kid, because I didn't really know many people who actually did go out and I own the business or I do this. Sure, you go in the pizza shop and you order your pizza, but you never had a conversation with, hey, what's it like to run your own business? So unless you're around that, learning those skills, which I'm so glad that Carlos's parents taught him, because it instilled some type of love for him to be able to, at the age of 23, go out and say, all right, I'm going to buy what was Dubina Brewing and I'm going to turn it into Throne Brewing and I'm going to run it. And I'm going to make money on it. I'm going to make it a business. Pretty cool.
Well, it's very cool. And it's even if your parents didn't buy a business, parents didn't teach you anything. He was talking about the deal he worked out, negotiated with Dubina, that was, you guys stick around for 30 days and show me how this is done. And they did that. And he's always talking about looking for the next opportunity. I think that's just invaluable. It doesn't have to come from your parents. It just has to get into the wake up in the morning and go, I want to do this.
To be able to want to do it for, as he said, some days 18-hour days, where he wakes up in the morning, he starts thinking about Throne Brewing, goes to work, he does what he needs to do at work, he goes home and he's like, let me think more about this. And that's really that entrepreneurial spirit. It's almost like an obsession to want to create better beer, better margins, because there's a challenge in that. There's a mental challenge in saying, okay, I can, let's say, make Throne beer, this Blood Orange IPA, the one we're drinking here on the Brewmance podcast and radio show. Let's say I can make this for $2 a can. How do I get it down to $1.50 a can? Saving 10 cents a can is going to be a massive amounts of savings. Can I buy more aluminum to make the cans? Can I buy a faster canning line? There's all kinds of different challenges that you can get into and do the math and try to do these investment numbers to try to propel the business forward, which is super fascinating and fun for some people. Not for all people, but fun for some people.
I think that's the difference of craft beer versus a lot of other industries, because to take that cost per can from $2 to $1.50, a lot of other businesses would go with we got to water it down route.
Yeah.
A lot of the mass producers who make sodas, beers, and not the craft beer world, the big beer world has done it, the stadiums and the like. But craft beer, you can't get away with it. You can't get caught sleeping. You get caught sleeping, you get cutting corners. It's just not a good look. You're not going to succeed.
And as we get older, Mike, and talking to someone like Carlos, who again is 26 years old and he owns Throne Brewing Company here in the Valley, it makes me value my time even more, because I don't know how much I have left. We were talking the earlier last week, because one of my favorite rappers, Shock G, who you might know as Humpty Hump, he passed away at the age of 57. And it just makes you think, man, what if I do? What if I get hit by a bus today? What am I doing today? And it makes you just want to focus on quality. So if you're going to drink beer, drink quality beer. If you're going to spend time with people, spend time with quality people. Have quality conversations, because you don't know when the last conversation you're going to ever have is going to be, or the last beer you're going to drink is going to be. So that's what goes through my head as I'm creeping towards 43 in a couple of months.
Dude, I'm 46 years old. Knock it off.
I'm not mad at it. I love it. I think it's amazing.
My dad and my biological father and my stepdad both died at age 56. So, I mean, to me, it's like, I got 10 years left. I got a decade left. I'm going to spend those. Am I going to go the same route? Obviously, there's consistency in the males in my family.
Well, let's hope you break through that barrier and make it to like 84.
Yeah, my goal is to beat the over, so we should be good, hopefully. But yeah, you're right. It's what are you going to do with it? Who are you going to spend it with? And just live each day like you should.
And let's see if this Throne Brewing Company's Blood Orange IPA is one of those quality beers that you would want to drink because it is so good. Mike Russell, what do you think about it?
I got a 4-pack when I was there, and I didn't know we were going to have Carlos on. And then when we had Carlos on, I had two of these beers left, and I decided to hold on to them so we could have them for this episode. And I don't know if I've ever had anything in my refrigerator that I've had to keep for a week that has been more challenging for me to not just dive into it. I'm not kidding. I thought I would stop at Total Wine and see if they have it just so I could drink those other two, the two we're having right now. I love this beer. I'm not a big fruit beer fan, but I'll tell you this. I know it sounds funny. I burped mid-can, and it was pure orange peel. I mean, that's how fresh and awesome this beer is. It's got that Bell Road IPA base, like you said, and then they just took the blood orange and just kicked it right in the pills. I love this damn thing. It's a 9, 9, and 9, and 9, 9, 9.
I'm at your 9. I love it too because it is much different for us. I mean, look, I'm an IPA guy, and the older I get and thinking about quality, the beers I like have bitterness to it. This beer has bitterness to it, but the orange in it interacts with the bitterness so nicely that leaves a little bitterness on your tongue, not an oppressive amount, just like ooh, this feels pretty good. And then you get that little orangey peel. It's just a nice blend of bitterness to fruit ratio that is not obnoxious with the fruit. It's not insanely bitter. It just leaves a nice finish. So yes, Throne Brewing Company, your blood orange IPA from the Brewmance is getting a 9. Well done, Carlos and the brewing team over there.
Good job. And I tell you what, this is going to be a beer that I introduce a lot of people to if they're coming in from out of town. I've got my list. This has definitely made the list. This is unique and it's delicious.
So our recommendation, go out and get some wherever you get your craft beer from. My name is Rob Hunter. His name is Mike Russell. We are the Brewmance. We are bringing people together over the wonders of craft beer and drinks for well-crafted conversations. Appreciate you joining us here on the Brewmance or the radio or the Brewmance podcast. If you want to catch the full conversation with Carlos, go get the podcast at anywhere you get your podcast, including right here on the iHeartRadio app. Until next Saturday night, 6 to 7 p.m. on 550 KFYI.
Cheers, everybody.